Soania Mathur.
Thank you, Sonia. Can you tell me a little bit about your diagnosis, please, if you don't mind?
Yeah, we have to go back quite a few years. I'll take you back about more than 20 years ago. I first noticed a tremor in my right pinky finger, and it was really intermittent and kind of more annoying than anything else at that time. I had just finished my training in family medicine. I'd done medical school and done a residency in family practice, and actually was expecting my first child when the tremor started.
Wow.
And I was sort of much too busy to sort of deal with it at that time. And as I said, it was intermittent. But with time and as my pregnancy progressed, the tremor became more consistent and persistent to the point where my husband kind of said, you know what, you've got to go get this checked out. Stop ignoring it. And I was ignoring it, like all good doctors do. They ignore their own symptoms. And I went to see a neurologist in the same clinic that I had joined. And he just put me through the clinical testing that we're all put through with the quacking and the walking and the rest of it. And he said to me, I think you have young onset Parkinson's disease. And I was floored and angry at that time. And I said, and you're obviously not a very good neurologist. And I reject your diagnosis. But I did accept his offer to send me to probably the foremost movement disorder specialist in the country, and when I went to him, instead of exonerating me from diagnosis, he confirmed it. So
Wow.
it's young onset Parkinson's disease at 27.
27, quirky.
Yeah.
So they often say that pregnancy can kind of exacerbate, or sometimes in some weird cases actually make Parkinson's symptoms better. Do you think it was something that was sort of lying there and then you became pregnant and it kind of raised it up, or?
It's possible. I mean, if I look back, I was experiencing a little bit of the tremor prior to my pregnancy, but also at that time, just before I got pregnant, I had some brain surgery done because I had a benign pituitary tumor that was removed. So I thought it was secondary to the neurosurgery.
Yeah.
So when I went to the neurosurgeon and I mentioned that I had, started with a little tremor now and again, he said, "Oh, well, don't worry about it. You're too young for it to be anything important." So it actually preceded, whether or not the pregnancy exacerbated it, I'm not sure. I've had 3 children since then, and I think with each of the pregnancies, it seemed to accelerate it a little bit, but then become manageable again. So
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. I'm sure there's a play between hormones and
Yeah, there's something.
neurotransmitters for sure.
So, to be diagnosed with something big and medical when you've just started your career in a kind of medical career, how did that feel? Was it? Do you think it actually has your medical knowledge helped you or hindered you quite along your journey so far?
It's a good question. I think initially it hindered me a little bit because I kind of, whatever knowledge I had was probably blown up in my mind in terms of what my future would hold. So I was, too much knowledge is not a good thing in that way. Because I could sort of, jump to conclusions in terms of what my future would be. But overall, I think it has been a help, simply because I can sort of tell what my symptoms are versus my side effects from my medications. I'm able to sort of judge my medications a little bit better, just having that medical background.
Yeah.
And, sort of, because as you know, Parkinson's disease symptoms are so pervasive. They affect every bodily system that we have. And there are so many other diseases that do affect those, or problems that affect those systems as well. So to sort of tease out what's your Parkinson's versus another medical situation is sometimes difficult. But I've been I guess my knowledge has helped me with discerning the difference between those two and also managing my medications.
So when you were diagnosed, I assume you kind of carried on working for a period of time.
Yeah, I was diagnosed at the beginning of my medical career, and I practiced for a good 12, 13 years before I decided to stop. And it was simply because I was driving myself into the ground. I mean, to practice medicine, I had to sort of time my medications and increase my medications in order to be able to give vaccinations or to do physical exams and that sort of thing. But I was suffering the side effects of the medication. So on top of that, I wasn't sleeping. I was anxious. I was hiding it all the time too. That was the other thing. I hadn't disclosed to my patients or my colleagues that I was dealing with the onset Parkinson's disease. So it was very difficult to hide it and to practice in a way that I felt was good for my patients. And I was basically compromising myself. So when I went to my neurologist towards the end of my career, she said, well, you have an option. You can either walk out of your office or you can crawl out, and you're headed towards crawling out because, you're just not doing yourself any good. Wow. So it was a very hard decision, but it was a decision I had to make.
And I imagine at some point you must have probably come into contact with patients that had Parkinson's. Was that bizarre?
Yeah, it was. It was very interesting to be on the other side of the examining table. But I think overall, though, that the Parkinson's experience gave me a lot of empathy for my patients in general in terms of what they're going through, any kind of chronic illness or any kind of even acute disease, because I understood where they were. I understood how it impacted their life and affected their quality of life. And I understood from a very early stage in my career that it wasn't the symptoms I was treating, it was the patient that I was treating and how they functioned overall within their sort of paradigm in terms of their life. That was what was most important.
I think Parkinson's is kind of weird in the fact that it takes away a lot, but it gives a lot as well, and that might be kind of one of the things it perhaps gave you,
Absolutely, I agree, yeah. I think Michael J. Fox says it's a gift that keeps on taking.
He always puts things so well, so much better than me. What would you say you're proudest of since your diagnosis that you've achieved or that's happened in your life?
I mean, to be honest, I think what I'm most proudest of it, and this goes for any parent, I think I'm most proud of my children. But in terms of the Parkinson's, I guess I'm most proud of how we as a family have been able to weather through this and are continuing to deal with this. I think that it has the potential to really cause a lot of stress and strain in family structure. But with our kids, we've sort of been very proactive in terms of how we explain the situation and how we deal with it. And because that's all they've known. They've only known me to have Parkinson's disease. So for them, it's quite normal. But it's taught them a lot of empathy and compassion and the importance of charity and giving. And I think that's what I'm most proud of.
That's really lovely. And you actually created a really beautiful book about Parkinson's, didn't you? That you kind of wrote with your children, is that right?
Yeah, there were two. There was this one was the first one, My Grandpa Shake, and that was more of like a preschool book, just a way for. It's about a grandfather and his grandson, and how, despite the grandfather's shakiness, the grandson only sees his grandfather for who he is someone he loves very much. And so that's kind of just a little storybook. But then I wrote this one with my daughters, Shaking Hands, A Kid's Guide to Parkinson's Disease. And that was very therapeutic for us. My daughters all contributed to the book, and the process was really important because that's one thing is that, children are affected by this disease. I mean, our family unit's affected by this disease. It's not just us that receive the diagnosis in that way.
Yeah.
And our children are very vulnerable, and they often make up stories in their minds that are worse than the truth itself. So I think it's important for us as adults to sort of guide them through the process, because it can be scary for them to see changes in their loved ones, but they don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic that you talk quite a lot about. I've kind of watched a lot of sort of videos and things of you being interviewed, and you can tell you're very passionate about how kind of children are informed and how they're involved in the kind of process of living with Parkinson's. And I think it's a really important question, like how you tell your family, how you share it, how you make it something not to be scared of.
That's right. I mean, I think that children are very intuitive. So even if you don't tell them, they know something's going on. And like I said, what they feel might be going on is probably worse than what is actually going on. So being able to be open with them and give them, create an environment where they feel comfortable to ask questions, because this disease, as you know, is progressive. It changes with time. So they should always feel that they're able to ask questions without any reprimanding or anything like that, or feeling embarrassed or unable to do so. So I think that conversation and creating that open environment and for discussion is really important. It helps them cope.
I think,
and empowering.
Sorry. I think that's true also of the fact that if I'm kind of, say, on the train or something and there's a mother with a child, often the child will kind of look, or especially with my neck being the way that it is, will look or ask questions, and the mums usually get quite kind of flustered and embarrassed about it, and I always kind of, if I overhear or notice it, I'll always say, no, it's fine, like, I'm more than happy to sort of to tell them, and I try and explain it as best I can, because I think that's, they're the adults of the future, and if they understand things now, then they won't be scared of them.
Absolutely. And they learn that, life is going to present challenges.
Yeah.
And it's the way you face those challenges that's most important. So, I think that. Mm-hmm.
So, you always, to me, come across very sort of poised and together. You have like a very sort of together nature about you, which is, I don't know how you do it, because you're busy, you're a mother, and you have Parkinson's. I'm not quite sure how you manage to have this kind of aura of like together going on.
I think you might be mistaken, but
you're very good at hiding.
I don't feel together, that's for sure. I think part of it is that Parkinson's is definitely part of my life, and it's a big part of my life. It affects me physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, but it's not me. I've never defined it myself as Parkinson's. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter, and sort of concentrating on those roles and concentrating on how best to be those roles is more important to me. So maybe that has something to do with it. I also do know that self-care is really important, so I do try, and it's even more important when you have something like Parkinson's. So I do try and, eat well and exercise and things like that, keep active, and keep my mind active is really important. Being engaged in the community is really important as well.
So if you were kind of put in front of someone that had just been diagnosed, what would you say to them? What have you learnt over your sort of period of time with Parkinson's that you would want to share, or would want to share with their families?
Right. So much. I think the most important thing I would say is to them is that, you have to come to a place of acceptance. This diagnosis really is not within our control. We didn't ask for this diagnosis. But how we face the challenges that this diagnosis brings into our life is really ours to determine. And we have to make ourselves stronger in terms of how we approach Parkinson's disease, because we have to be active participants in our own management. We can't depend on the medical system to treat us without us participating as well. So that means building your team of people that help you out. Reach out to people in terms of support, friends, family, online support groups, other people in the Parkinson's community. Make sure that you control those variables that you do have control over, like your diet and your exercise and your activity. Don't isolate yourself. That's another thing that a lot of patients tend to do. It's not worth it. It really isn't. There's a whole community of really supportive people that are there for you should you choose to access them. What else could I say? Make sure that you educate yourself. That's another really important thing, especially early on in the disease. Educate yourself about the symptoms, about the side effects of your medications, how your medications work. Be very, very rigid in terms of your routine, self-care routines, medication routines, follow-ups. Just become very active in terms of your management, your participation, because you're the one in charge. You're the only one that knows what your goals are. And always, always, always keep your quality of life in mind, because only you can define what your quality of life is. For some, it might be, getting to the point where they can walk around the block. For others, it might be running a marathon, but only you know what is going to bring you quality of life. and make sure that you mobilize the resources around you in order to reach those goals.